Welcome to Shalom World Podcast.
Welcome back to another episode of Heroic Lives, where we explore the extraordinary stories of saints whose wisdom, courage, and faith continue to shape our world.
Heroic Lives.
In our last episode, we explored the life of Saint Athanasius of Alexandria, a fearless defender of Christ's divinity. Today, we move forward in history, but remain on the same battlefield, the fight to preserve the truth of who Christ is and what we believe as Christians.
Our focus?
Saint Basil of Caesarea, a bishop, a theologian, a monastic founder, and a tireless advocate for the poor. Known as Basil the Great, he shaped both Christian doctrine and Christian life in ways that still impact us today. He defended the truth of the Trinity, laid the foundation for Eastern monasticism, and created one of the earliest models of Christian charity. Basil's story isn't just about theological debates or church councils. His was a life of deep conviction, relentless service, and unshakable faith, even in the face of imperial pressure and personal suffering. His story has something to say to all of us, especially in a world that often pulls us away from what really matters.
So, let's step back into the 4th century and meet the man who gave everything, his mind, his strength, and ultimately his life, for the sake of the gospel.
Basil was born around 330 AD in Caesarea in Cappadocia, modern-day Turkey. He lived in a devout family, and the family had an extraordinary story of faith. His grandmother, Macrina the Elder, had lived through Roman persecutions, passing down a faith that was tested and true. His sister, Macrina the Younger, became a monastic leader. His brothers Gregory of Nyssa and Peter of Sebaste became bishops. Talk about a powerhouse of holiness. This foundation of perseverance and a deep-rooted spirituality created a framework for Basil's own theological and social ideas. Basil's family was spiritually rich and also deeply committed to shaping the church's future through their own examples of faith and service. Basil was given an education fit for a future statesman. He studied in Caesarea, Constantinople, and Athens, learning philosophy, rhetoric, and the classics. And it was in Athens that he met Gregory of Nazianzus, his lifelong friend and theological companion. Together with Gregory of Nyssa, Basil's brother, they became the Cappadocian Fathers, whose theological writings would contribute to shaping the Church's understanding of the Trinity. For a while, Basil was on track for a brilliant career, maybe law, maybe politics. But then, something shook him to his core: the death of his brother. Suddenly, the success he had worked for seemed empty. He later admitted, "I wasted much time on things of no profit and spent nearly all of my youth in vain labors." That realization led him to something deeper. Basil set out on a journey, visiting monastic communities in Egypt, Syria, and Palestine. What he saw changed him. These men and women had left everything to seek God in silence, prayer, and simple living. Inspired, he returned home, gave away his wealth, and embraced the monastic life. But Basil didn't just disappear into the wilderness. He built something new. Unlike hermits who lived in isolation, Basil believed that Christian life should be lived in community. He established a monastic rule that emphasized prayer, work, and service. His rules of Saint Basil remain the foundation of Eastern monasticism, guiding monks to live in love, humility, and charity. Basil's monastic rule was deeply practical, rooted in the belief that holiness is not isolated to a life of solitude, but is realized in community. His rule emphasized the balance between prayer, work, and service to others. The monks under his rule were not just contemplatives, but active participants in the life of the community. This vision of monasticism was a radical departure from other forms of monastic life that emphasized isolation, focusing instead on the communal sharing of resources and the care of the needy. This concept laid the foundation for monastic communities across Eastern Christianity, with lasting influence well beyond his death. In 370 AD, Basil was chosen as Bishop of Caesarea. It wasn't an easy time to be a bishop. The church was divided over Arianism, a dangerous heresy that denied Christ's divinity. Even some bishops hesitated to take a stand. But Basil? He had no hesitation. The Arian controversy resulted in a battle for the very identity of Christianity. Basil's response to Arianism was not merely academic, but pastoral, a way to preserve the unity of the church and protect the faithful from heresy. Saint Basil passionately defended the term homoousios, which means of the same essence, as the key to understanding the divinity of Christ. He explained it simply, yet powerfully. When we say Christ is light from light, begotten, not made, Basil pointed out that the light of the Son is the same as the light of the Father, equal, perfect, and unchanging. For Basil, homoousios wasn't just theological jargon. It was the heart of the truth about Christ's full and absolute divinity, a truth he fought tirelessly to preserve. He wrote On the Holy Spirit, a theological masterpiece defending the co-equality of the Holy Spirit with the Father and the Son. His work laid the foundation for the Council of Constantinople in 381 AD, which officially confirmed the doctrine of the Trinity. But Basil wasn't just a scholar, he was a shepherd. When Emperor Valens, an Arian sympathizer, tried to intimidate him into submission, Basil stood his ground. A government official threatened to exile him, confiscate his property, or even kill him.
Basil's response?
You cannot take from me what I do not possess, unless you mean these worn-out clothes and a few books. As for exile, the whole earth belongs to God. And death? I welcome it. It will bring me to him sooner.
That kind of fearless faith? This was a man who feared God more than he feared men.
Basil's greatness wasn't just in words, it was in action. In addition to his theological contributions, Basil was deeply concerned with the poor, the marginalized, and the sick. He didn't see charity as an afterthought. It was central to his faith. When famine hit, Basil didn't simply offer his prayers. He offered his resources, his time, and his leadership. He sold what he had, opened a soup kitchen, and personally served the hungry. And then he went even further. He founded the Basiliad, a revolutionary concept for its time, one of the first Christian hospitals and social service centers. It was massive, a place where the sick were cared for, the poor were fed, and orphans found a home. It was one of the earliest models of Christian charity, setting a precedent for the church's mission to care for the poor. In a world where the church was often criticized for its failures to care for the poor, Basil's commitment to service set a powerful precedent. His belief that the bread you store up belongs to the hungry was not just a pious statement. It was the foundation of a new way of living the gospel. His focus wasn't just on giving, but on creating systems of care and compassion that would help Christians live out their faith in a communal and practical way. That's the kind of radical gospel living that we are called to live today. Relentless work and illness took a toll on Basil. He suffered greatly but never stopped. He continued writing, teaching, and caring for his people until his death on January 1st, 379 AD, at the age of 49. Both the Eastern and Western churches quickly recognized him as a saint, and his feast day is celebrated each year on January 1st. His influence didn't die with him. His monastic rule still shapes religious life. His theological writings still guide the church. His example of charity still inspires Christian service around the world. Even today, the Divine Liturgy of Saint Basil is celebrated in Eastern Christian communities. His legacy endures. Saint Basil of Caesarea was a brilliant theologian, a fearless bishop, and a man whose actions spoke louder than words. His life reminds us that faith is not just about ideas, it's about action. It's about standing firm for the truth, loving our neighbor, and trusting in God, no matter the cost. We see a man who understood the deepest purpose of our existence. He didn't live for wealth, prestige, or comfort. He lived for God. And in his own words, God created man to share in his eternal and blessed life, to know him, to love him, and to live with him forever. Basil not only believed this, he built his entire life upon it. Every sermon he preached, every theological battle he fought, every act of charity he performed was rooted in this truth. He knew that holiness was not just for a chosen few, but for all who seek to know, love, and live with God. His life asks us, are we living our faith with that kind of conviction? Are we standing for truth, even when it's tough? Are we using what we have to serve others?
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Heroic Lives. If this journey through the life of Saint Basil inspired you, be sure to subscribe and share. And remember, holiness isn't just for the saints of old, it's for all of us. Until next time, God bless you.
Shalom World Podcasts is now available on all online platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and others.